Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Unsustainable Wednesdays, everyone's favorite day of the week, not because it's hump day, because it's Unsustainable Wednesday day. That's why. Although,
Wednesday day.
Both things ring true. So let's start off first with the episode. We're not going to jump right into Unsustainable. Let's talk first about the trade that went down. We're recording this Monday night, so the Jason Zucker trade just happened. So let's talk a little bit briefly about the Jason Zucker trade, what it means going forward. Does it affect guys like Brian Rust? What about guys like Patrick Hornquist? That sort of thing.
You know what? I'll start. I think it's good for Jason Zucker. I think on the Pens, it probably is not going to matter much. Like, I think the guys that will be affected are like the Simones, the Cahoons. I don't think that it's going to affect Rust or Hornquist. Maybe Hornquist, but Hornquist I feel like is already affected. He's just permanently affected. Yeah, he's always just a guy that shoots and hits a lot and is on power play one and doesn't quite do as much as you expect every year. Yeah. So it potentially he gets bumped off that top line, but I don't know. You know, you see Simone and McCann there. They seem like more easier possibilities of a replacement for where Zucker can go as he plays left and right wing.
Yep. Agreed. I mean, I think at the end of the day, they want to find a good long-term spot for Zucker. I don't think Zucker is or this is obvious. Zucker still has 3 years on his contract, 28 years old. They probably want to find a spot on either Malkin or Crosby's wing for him because you're paying him $5.8 million. You want him long-term. You probably want to find a good spot for him. Otherwise, the trade is kind of worthless. I think you only make that trade if you have the idea that Zucker can slot in with one of the two top lines. So I think it's a net positive for him. I think at the end of the day, the power play will be a big question mark. Can he steal a spot on the top power play? I don't think he will. But you never know. Crazier things happen.
I know it will not. God, I
Sir,
can't say it.
Brandon Sutter just scored a goal. A power play goal.
Alexa just turned on. She's angry with you saying this.
Brandon Sutter turned on Alexa too.
Alexa, stop. Good Lord. That's why you shouldn't have robots in your house that listen to your words.
I mean, I kind of like robots. You always thought I was kind of like a robot.
You are a robot.
Yeah. I mean, I did tell Siri the other day to turn off my alarm, and it told me it did not have anyone, but it did not have an alarm named Jose. So
wow.
I kind of laughed. It woke me up, honestly. It worked. Okay, so now
the only one that I think the only possibility to go back to Zucker for a second would be Rust, but I just don't see how do you do it? How can you convince anybody to I don't think he's going to take Hornquist's spot. It just doesn't really make sense from a player perspective.
I actually think he adds a really good dimension to that second power play because he's a shooter.
Sure,
was
it's still the second power play. It's never going to be that good.
No,
and then it's never going to get that much ice time. Yeah. You just play the first one as much as you can and hope for the best.
I would say
that just send out your fives lines.
I do think that all the ads that are happening are a little premature. And again, we're recording this Monday night, so by the time you see this Wednesday morning, maybe we're wrong, right? But the ads do feel kind of premature. If you remember last year, the trade Bjugstad, right? Bjugstad got traded to the Pens, the same exact trade, and everyone rushed to pick him up. And what ended up happening? He was worthless. We told you to be careful. Zucker, I think, is not on that level. I do like him as a pickup, but without power play, there is a ceiling on his potential. So
yeah, for sure.
We could just be looking at another McCann, right? Like that's literally what you could be looking at. So that's the only thing with him. Okay, so now we can jump into the episode. So let's start off with Unsustainably High, and I'll start first with Colton Parayko, defenseman, 49% owned. I mean, as soon as I sat down to write this script, I didn't even have to look up stats. I didn't have to look if it validated my opinions. I just wrote down Colton Parayko. I just knew.
Yeah, I have him as well.
That there were weird things. So he has 5 points in his last 7 games. But the thing is, all of them have come in the last 3 games. So there you go. A little bit of a switcheroo there. The 7 games don't matter. So let's only take a look at what has happened in the last 3 games when it comes to Colton Parayko. 40% shooting, 18% on-ice shooting percentage, still very low power play percentage and around the 20% mark. And he's been getting somewhat more consistent ice time. The ice time from an average perspective on the season is not that much more. It's less, actually, than what his season average is. But it's been more consistent over these last few games and more in like the 23 mark. So that's what's been helping him out. But that 40% shooting is a big deal because a lot of his points are coming from goals. So I expect this all to come down for Colton Parayko. Good for him for getting more ice time recently, or more consistent ice time at that. But I just don't see these points keeping up.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I think if you're adding Colton Parayko, it should be for his peripherals more than anything else.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, my first one, I had him as well, but is Matt Niskanen. Defense, 41%. It's just too many points, and I think the ads are being reactive to the points, which because the rest of his game has been pretty much the same, and like he does get you some peripherals, nothing crazy, and he's been like an okay defenseman. Like he's one of the better not power play defensemen as far as like a total player. You know, you think of when I think of players that I like as that don't have the high upside of a top power play defenseman, which you need if you want to have a lot of points. Like Nate Schmidt comes to mind pretty quickly as a above average point getter. Ryan Ellis, of course, but Schmidt, as opposed to Niskanen, doesn't really do anything from the peripheral standpoint unless you count blocks. Niskanen gets some shots, some hits, and has decent power play exposure actually, which really isn't helping out that much. I think he's on a 16 power play point pace at this point, but it's not nothing, which is nice. And he's converting a little bit, and he's getting closer to a 50% power play share as they're starting to even things out in Philadelphia a little bit. So I like him, but he's being added too much, and I feel like, I don't know. I think people are expecting these points that he's been getting lately to keep up in any capacity, which they won't.
Yeah, I mean,
he's been on a 60-point pace for the last month. That's just not, won't be happening.
I think I like Severson more than I like Niskanen, to be honest.
Oh, definitely. Without a doubt, I like Severson more than Niskanen.
And Niskanen's getting picked up more than Severson.
Yep.
I thought I was done saying this name this year. I thought I was done, and yet here we are. Joe Pavelski, center right wing, 68% owned. Yep. So he
Isn't
has
he hurt?
five. He is now day to day as of Monday night. So there's that. But who knows? Maybe he comes back. Either way, I want to talk about it because he's 68% owned. You should not have him on your team. I get he just had a ridiculous week. Fine. But here's the thing. Of those 5 points he just got, 4 of them came on the power play. Okay, so 4 of the 5 are coming from the power play. His shooting percentage over those 4 games is 30% if you include even strength and power play. But when you can't, that's not fair, right? It's not fair because when you're looking at it, he didn't get many points even strength. He only got 1. And so what was his shooting on the power play? And it was 60%. 60% on the power play. You think that's going to continue? Absolutely not. Especially a Stars team that is not very good on the power play to begin with. Minutes are still really low. 100% IPP as well. So the only goal that got scored on the ice he was a part of. So not even on the ice for that many goals. For him to have gotten 100% IPP and was only involved in 5, that's not that great. It doesn't bode well going forward. So in all instances, Joe Pavelski to me is, look, I would even try to sell high and see
Definitely.
if maybe someone will believe that, oh my God, Joe Pavelski is back and this is his resurgence. Because it's not. It's absolutely not.
Yeah, I definitely agree. My next one actually scored 2 goals tonight, so these are not
Lovely.
factored into the stats I've been looking at, is Anthony Beauvillier. Center left wing, 16%, although I'm sure by the time this comes out, he'll be at like 25% or something. Very high shooting percentage lately. He's above 21% on the month. I just say above because he is 21% right now. But again, 2 goals tonight, so it's going to be higher than that. He is above a 75% IPP, which is too high for him as well. For Beauvillier, I would expect him to fall around, I feel like 60% IPP is generous, which is his share of the points when he's on the ice, basically. He was at 55% last season, so giving him 60%, saying he's getting more Barzal time. Maybe you get that bump there, but I wouldn't give him much beyond that. He also doesn't shoot much and has low power play deployment. It varies a little bit on the island, but it's not enough for me to be high on him long term. He's been streaky in the past. He actually reminds me of Zucker in some ways, where they'll go on these like month-long scoring sprees where they just seem to be very weirdly able to get everything in the net, and then they'll fall back off. So maybe he's in one of those, and maybe he's worth a look when he has a good schedule. But beyond that, he's not going to be a long-term hold. He's not anybody to get too excited about because his situation changes so often. You see him play 18 minutes one night to play 13 minutes the next, and this types of stuff is just not good for his consistency.
Somewhat along those same lines is Kevin Fiala, another guy that minutes kind of go up and down, and you never really know where exactly he's going to end up. Now, the loss of Jason Zucker may help him a little bit, but over these last 4 games, he had 20% shooting. He is getting better ice time, which is good. But again, it's not consistent. Sometimes he'll get it for a week or so, and then it all kind of comes crumbling down. He does have 100% IPP over the last 3 games or 4 games, with a 13.5 on ice shooting percentage. And sure, that'd be fine if he were on Nashville still, but he's not. He's on Minnesota. So because he's on Minnesota, you should expect a lower on ice shooting percentage than 13.5. So yeah, Kevin Fiala is going to come down to earth in no time, I would assume.
Yeah, I actually, I thought about putting him on my list, but I want to see a little bit more because I do, especially now with the Zucker trade. I do like the increase in minutes I'm seeing. I do like the fact that it seems like Minnesota has decided on a power play 1, and he's part of it. So and I like his line. He's playing with Eric Staal and Parise lately, so he's in as good a position as he can be in. So I like to see a little bit more at him.
Fine. I mean, there is some upside there. I'll say that, but I don't think it's very much.
All right, I'm going to move us into Unsustainably Low.
Let's do it.
And I actually think I'm going to take 2 here.
Ooh.
Because they're on the same team.
Might as well.
Yeah. So, first up, and the one I like more, is Tanner Pearson, left wing 40% owned, and also Jake Virtanen, left wing, right wing 15% owned.
Wow.
For Pearson, and originally when I wrote this, all I knew about Pearson was he was being slated for power play 1, which now that the game is going on, it seems like Sutter got a power play goal off of Pettersson and Hughes. So maybe he actually didn't get the deployment it looked like he was going to get. But it seems, I don't know why they're still playing Sutter up there, although he got a goal, so they know what's going on apparently. But what is seeming to be happening is the Pettersson line now has Pearson and Virtanen on it, which is probably good for both of them. Miller doesn't seem to be slowing down at all either, so it doesn't seem to matter where he plays. So with these two, which goes contrary to what I was saying at the beginning of the season where he needs to be tied to a line, I guess Miller's just really good. Who knew? But with Virtanen and Pearson, Besser being out is basically good news for both of them. I think that what we will wind up seeing once the dust settles, if Besser's out for any length of time, is Pearson will go back to the line with Horvat if he's not already, and he will get the power play 1 slot in front of Sutter, and then we'll see Virtanen playing with Miller and Pettersson. I still don't think he's going to get power play time. I don't know what the narrative is with Virtanen. He's always seemed like the type of player. He reminds me kind of Jeff Skinner for a long time, and maybe this is why this is happening to him. But it always seemed like when he played on Carolina, Skinner had all this potential, and he's willing to shoot, he skates hard, and blah blah blah, and he was always playing third line, and like his minutes were all over the place and whatever else. This is what we're seeing in Buffalo now as well. But I feel like Virtanen's that guy, and he's the guy now that I want to see. What happens if you give him 18 to 20 minutes a night? Just for like a month. Just what happens? Does he explode?
For funsies.
Yeah. Does he explode physically? Like he literally bursts into flames and they have to find a new winger? Or does he explode in the terms of actually becoming fantasy relevant for a while? Hoping the latter.
If you explode into flames, do you automatically have to be traded to the Flames?
I think you just become one.
Oh. Right, well, I mean, that's literally what bursting into flames means. Like,
yeah, but you don't. Well, no, you don't just become a flame. You become engulfed in flames.
I hate you. Okay, I'm gonna. I have 2 here. I'm gonna move. I only have 2 on Unsustainably Low in general. So I am going to do one of them. You can take your last one. My first one is Blake Wheeler, center right wing, 98%. Now, you're gonna say, hold on, but over the last 6 games, Blake Wheeler has been point per game. Why is he on Unsustainably Low? That's because he could be doing better, actually, believe it or not. And he's a guy who could do better, right? We have this history of Blake Wheeler being a 100-plus point guy, 90-plus point guy. So he can be better than an 82 pace guy. What's low? His shooting percentage is low. IPP is right in line. Power play percentage is still high, and so I want to see more goals out of Blake Wheeler, which I feel like we say every single year, and then they just come in bunches, and he ends the season at the same shooting percentage he's always had. So that's why I like the idea of him being unsustainably low, and I actually really do like him as a potential buy low candidate. I know he's been really good as of late, but you'd be shocked at how many people in our mentions, in our live streams, and everything have asked us what's up with Blake Wheeler. A lot of people have asked that, and he's been fine. The problem is that people are expecting this 120-point player or 110-point player. That's just not who he is this season. He's more of an 82 pace, kind of safe bet guy with the potential of having 90 plus.
Has Wheeler ever gotten 100 points?
I think he has pace wise.
He's been, yeah. He got 2 91-point seasons in a row.
Okay, so 91 points. Did he miss any games there?
He missed one.
Oh, okay, okay, so he's a 90 plus potential guy. Fine, but
yeah, certainly better than he's been.
He can still. I think he's due some goals here, and so I like him rest of season as that 90 to 100 pace guy.
Yeah. Okay. My last one, since I took 2, is Ben Sherratt. Defense 22%. We mentioned him as a pickup target due to Weber's mysterious whatever is going on. Put him on IR immediately, which is weird. Yeah, so I do think we're going to see some power play points coming his way. With his deployment on the power play, again, like we've said, Montreal doesn't really play a true power play one, so it gives both units a decent amount of time to get things done. And the fact that Sherratt already brings his peripherals, this is mostly a Bangers League recommendation. It just boosts him to that next level. It makes me think that if things are going well, he will basically play the same as Jeff Petrie. That's what I'm hoping to see. A 40 to 45 point guy that can, while he's in this deployment, that can grab some power play points and also puts up good peripherals.
Yeah.
He hasn't been doing much in the points department lately.
Shocker.
My
last one here is someone we actually talked about at the beginning of the show, and that's Brian Rust, left wing, right wing, 82% owned. Ice time is still crazy high, but he has a very low IPP, and he hasn't been factoring into points recently, so I would expect that to come up. And the good thing is he still has very solid power play time and power play percentage. When you look at the Pens, they get some of the most power play time of anybody. So when you look at Brian Rust, you're looking at around 4 minutes of average power play time on ice, which is insane. So it's huge for Brian Rust. His minutes are still high. His power play time on ice is still high. And I would expect his IPP to come right back up to where you'd expect. And over these last 2 weeks, his shooting percentage has actually been really low. On the last 30 days, it's been fine. It's just over these last 14 days that it's been a touch low.
I have no more left.
No, well.
And nothing to add to whatever it is you're talking about.
No, Brian Rust. That's it. Beautiful, beautiful man. Do you want to take us into Sustainably High then?
Sure. Sustainably High.
Yeah. Oh,
the
one
first
thing.
One.
Actually, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna interject.
Yeah.
One quick thing that I wanted to remind people. I wanted to use this opportunity quickly to remind people that when you're looking at pace, right? We don't have many seasons weeks left in the season.
Mm-hmm.
There's only
that's how that phrase.
Yes, that's how that works.
Goes.
There's not that many weeks left in the season, and so when you're looking at pace, it's okay. This was I was mentioning this on Blake Wheeler, but I forgot. It's okay to look at a guy and think, what is his potential on a week-to-week basis, right? Can you look at a guy that's a point per game pace rest of season guy, but that you could see at some point in a week or thinking about it week to week? Is this a guy who week to week sometimes gives me like a 60-point pace one week and then a 100 plus pace next week, but overall, that's a consistency thing. Like, pay attention to consistency going forward, especially as you make trades and whatnot, because that's really important when you go forward. Sure, maybe someone's at an 82-point pace, but when you're in the playoffs, who cares if his pace on the season is good? You need every single week to be good, right? And so all of a sudden now you start looking a little bit more short term as we get closer to the playoffs. Sure, you want to look long term as well, but more than anything, you're looking at what can a player do for me week to week.
Yeah, I usually think, especially when we get close to playoffs, deployment changes kind of catch my eye a lot more, because like you're saying, I don't need this deployment to stick for half the season. I need to stick for essentially 20 games or 10 games or whatever it is. So yeah. Anyway,
you also pay attention you also pay attention for those deployment changes as well. It just kind of catches my eye. So for example, I see Pearson or Virtanen get top line, and I think, okay, come playoff time, I need to keep an eye on them, because there's a chance that some injury happens or something happens. And I just kind of take mental notes of all these guys we've seen get bumped to top lines. And then you kind of take this stock of, okay, pay attention to injuries, and you start to have an idea of if something goes wrong, who's going to get the opportunity? Who's going to get that chance up there? Because right now we know we have a good idea of who's going to be getting those opportunities, and it helps you make pickups down in the playoff time.
Yep.
Now you can go on Sustainably High.
All right. My first one actually had a deployment change a little bit here.
Ooh.
Mikhail Granlund. Actually, I think it's Backlund that likes Michael. I think Granlund actually likes Mikhail. They all. It's impossible. Left wing, right wing, 23%. Ice time is up in a big way. His power play share is up to 60% and above. His IPP and on ice shooting are returning to what we saw with him in Minnesota, which I actually don't necessarily expect him to totally get there because he was more of a central figure when he played in Minnesota. But all this is trending in the right direction. We're seeing Granlund playing with a better line. We're seeing Granlund play good power play minutes. Everything looks where you'd want it to be. Now, I'm still kind of lukewarm on Granlund because I typically play in category leagues, and Granlund, if you've played in a category league, you realize that Granlund does not really give you much beyond points. I still expect that to keep up. So recommending him in Cats leagues is kind of hard. But at the very least, you should be keeping an eye on him, as I expect his recent point getting to kind of keep up.
Yep. My next one here is Mike Hoffman, Florida Panthers, left wing, right wing, 86% owned. Things are pretty in line for him. IPP is a touch high, but everything else looks really good. And he looks like a 75 plus player with amazing power play point pace rest of season. And the reason I bring him up here is because I feel like he was so bad to start the season that people have kind of forgotten about him and almost thought, oh, he was a bust this season. Like, sucks that I've seen that around a little bit of like, oh, it sucks that Hoffman wasn't as good this season. Folks, he's on a ridiculous pace over the last 30 days. I think it's a 90 plus point pace the last 30 days. It's pretty insane, and he's been really, really good. I'm really mad that someone grabbed him off free agency in our most competitive league, but it was insane that he was even available in that scenario. And so, someone just to think about. And if you're thinking, oh, is this the real deal or not? Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay, my next one is Jared Spurgeon.
What is up with your list today? You have the names I would have never expected you to actually give credit to.
Jared Spurgeon is getting a lot of power play time, and 6 of his last 7 points have been on the power play, which, of course, is not sustainable. But like we've said time and again on this show, for a defenseman to get good offensive numbers, they have to get it done on the power play. Spurgeon's doing that, so he's going to be rewarded with more power play time, which we're already seeing. All these things are kind of moving together to make a guy that's only 19% seem very interesting. I'm actually surprised he's not higher owned, as he's been good for a little bit here, and the rest of his numbers aren't like horrible or anything as far as category coverage goes. So I do think we're going to start seeing an increase in ownership of Spurgeon, especially if this point getting he's been doing lately keeps up.
Oh, I've got a fun one for my next one. Mika Zibanejad, center, 91%. Now, the reason I have him on here, I don't know why my headphone is all off my ear. Weird. Sorry for the people watching on video. It must have looked like a... Never mind. Not important. So Mika Zibanejad, the reason I have him on here is because a lot of us are starting to think about in trades and whatnot, is someone worth a keeper? How valuable are they as a keeper? And Mika Zibanejad is the real deal. 90-plus guy rest of the season. I could see that next year. He's absolutely an elite player. IPP and shooting percentage are a touch low, actually, which is kind of insane at the moment. With how much he shoots, too, that matters. Like, if you're as big of a shooter as Mika Zibanejad is, when your shooting percentage is a little bit low, then it does matter, even if it's off by 1%, just because your volume is so high. And Mika Zibanejad is that. He can still be better than he's already been. So if you're at the bottom of the table and you're looking for a guy who someone may be willing to move, that is a fantastic keeper, especially in categories leagues going forward. Mika Zibanejad would be at the top of my list. One of the top centers on my list, up there with the most elite, honestly. I would maybe, this maybe is a hot take, I would maybe have Zibanejad over Seguin next year.
Actually, I probably would.
Yeah.
I'd remember this over him this year anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, my next one is Nick Foligno. Center, left wing, right wing, 24%. This is a Bangers League recommendation, as he comes from... What you get from him is good category coverage, but he's also, especially with Atkinson out, he's going to be getting a little bit more power play opportunity. I feel like that's been my kind of thing this whole episode is power play. I guess it probably is usually anyway. But Atkinson being out is just one less person to compete with for a top power play spot. He's honestly probably about a 50 to 55 point guy, but considering the amount of hits he's been throwing lately, it's just ridiculous. And the shots have been there as well. He had a 9-shot game a couple games ago, and yeah, you combine all those things and you wind up with a player that should be owned in a lot of even standard category leagues just because of his hit and shot coverage. To get that kind of coverage with even decent numbers like point totals, he's pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, my next one here is John Klingberg, defenseman, 75% owned. Here's the thing with Klingberg. When on-ice shooting percentage is fine for the Stars, he's solid and a 60-plus player. We've seen this all season. When the Stars have a good shooting percentage, when he has a good on-ice shooting percentage, he's a 60-plus player. That's pretty much how it's been all season. The problem is they're not that a lot of the times. A lot of times they're more of an 8 to 9% on-ice shooting team. And when that happens, Klingberg falls to this around 45-point guy. And so he's a player that if you're looking at it, if you're at the top of the table, I like him because he has very good upside with not that terrible of a floor. Kind of depends on where you're at and what you need. But for the most part, he's a guy that has that 60-plus ceiling. If he can go off on a week during the playoffs, it's awesome. And then his floor is, 40-ish, 45-point pace, which isn't great. It's really not that good, but it's good enough that if he becomes, let's say you trade around and you don't have to pay that much, and he becomes your worst defenseman, that's still pretty good for your worst defenseman. Of course, you're not going to get any peripherals, but if you're in a points league or something like that, then that's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, I will move us into sustainably low. Okay. Then, if there are no objections this time.
The bums, no objections. You can continue unabated.
All right, my first one. He's actually the last one on my list, but he's the one that needs to be mentioned first. Is Zach Kassian. Right wing, 31%. That ownership is still pretty high considering he played 7 minutes in his last game and is off of McDavid's line. It's curtains. He's lost his spot. And that's that. He may get it back at some point, but honestly, even when he had it over the last little bit, he hasn't been all that great. So not necessarily worth hanging on to regardless.
Yeah, I mean, he's really lost a lot of value in the last few weeks. And
I mean, playing 7 minutes, absolutely not. And with goose eggs across the board to boot.
Yeah, and I mean, if the Oilers, which seems to be that they will, if they are active at the trade deadline, then that's not going to be great for him either. It's going to make it worse.
Wow, the Oilers might actually be buyers.
I know, it's weird.
What a day. What a world we are living in now. Turn the corner.
Yeah, big day for them. My first one here is...
I feel like they're just going to go default mode and trade for picks anyway.
Yeah, probably. They'll probably just tear it all up. I mean, they did just give a big contract to Darnell Nurse. Okay, my first one here is going to hurt your soul, and that's Anthony Duclair. Left wing, right wing, 36%. Yeah. Now, on one hand, he is actually unsustainably low. His on-ice shooting percentage is ridiculously low, like 3%. He has a 0% IPP. His shooting percentage is 0% as well. So, it's all unsustainably low. The problem is that the minutes have fallen off. The shots have fallen off a little bit. They're starting to. And while I'm very confident there will be some kind of a turnaround for Anthony Duclair, I just don't think it's worth waiting around for.
Yep, I agree. I dropped him.
Yeah, I dropped him too. It's time.
At least we still have Armia.
At least we have Armia. Yeah, that makes me happy. And Kovalchuk. And Suzuki.
Kovalchuk.
Good week to have all those guys.
But Suzuki's kind of new at this point. We can't call him one of the gang.
He's the new hot thing.
Yeah. Okay, my next one is Dominic Kubalik. It happened, and we said it was going to happen eventually, but it happened. The funny thing is, despite everything else, he still has 100% IPP over the last 14 days, and he has 1 point. So really, the whole line hasn't been scoring, but there's just not much to be excited about. That line worked for a while, but his shots are coming down, his minutes are coming down. He never had the power play time to begin with. I don't see. I feel like at the best of times he's going to be a 50 to 55 point player with not much else to show for it. No power play, not much in the way of hits, maybe some, but not a ton, and like just decent shots. So I don't know. I'm not sure I would hang on to him anymore. In fact, I am not. I've moved
Yeah.
off of him in the leagues that I have him in.
Yeah, and I actually had him on drop candidates earlier in the week, and
He still
when
makes an
we
okay
did,
streamer option for what it's
yeah,
worth.
good streamer option. Like we talked about, right? He's kind of like Bjorkstrand, where he's a shooter first and foremost, but the problem is he's just not getting the deployment Bjorkstrand is. So
Yep.
if he's not getting the deployment, he's a streamer in that. That's about it. Um, so yeah, I agree with you on there. My next one here is Alexander Radulov, left wing, right wing, 84%, also injured, but I don't know if it's really worth holding on anymore when he comes back. 25-point pace over his last 10 games, which is absolutely brutal. Minutes have dipped like crazy. His peripherals are also completely gone. And that was the only thing that was keeping him relevant before. It was when the peripherals were on point, then he's worth holding on to. But now you don't have peripherals, you don't have points. And the crazy thing is that when you look at his last 30 days, that 25-point pace over 10 games, his shooting percentage is actually high, which is just sad. That's very, very sad. So Alexander Radulov to me is someone that absolutely you can just kind of move on from, and you won't miss out on much.
Yeah. Unfortunately for me,
Yeah,
as I have
a
in
streamer
Dynasty.
spot is just whether you need peripherals from him or you need points from him. A streamer at this point is better than both of those things, or better than him at both those things.
Yep. All right, my last one is Jeff Skinner, center left wing, 46%. I'm starting to think he might have the worst forward contract in the league. I don't know if I can come up with anybody that has a worse one right now, considering the way things are going so quickly. Yeah. I don't see it. You know, he's got with Olofsson having been out for so long. You think that if he was going to have the opportunity to right the ship, it would be now. And you know, he's still not seeing time top left wing. And I don't know what the deal is, but I don't see a way that he can turn this around. At least not in this season. So man,
Oof, it's
what a
yeah,
mess.
it's brutal. I had him on drop candidates this week as well, and there's no answer. I don't know. And his production has actually fallen off. Like his play itself has been brutal. So I'm curious to see how he comes back next year. I'm assuming this year is just a wash for him. It's so bad. I don't think there's any salvaging it, like you said. And my last one here is Jonathan Drouin, center left wing, 31%. A lot of people held on through his injury. Immediately playing super low minutes. I just don't think there's any upside here. So if you were holding on for whatever reason, in deep leagues, obviously, you know your value better than we do. But from a like if you're in a 12-person league, for example, there's no point in holding on to Jonathan Drouin when you've got guys like Suzuki, Kovalchuk, and Armia and Tatar and these other people owning up minutes up at the top. And there's just no opening at the moment for Jonathan Drouin to even sneak in up there. So, and Deneau as well on center. So there's no room. I think Drouin right now is a bottom six player, unless something very drastic changes in that top six.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's it. Are you?
That's it. We're done.
We are done. So that was a little bit of a not as wacky. We thought it was gonna be a wacky episode. It wasn't as wacky as we thought. But anyways, that is the Unsustainable episode. Pay attention to the weekend preview. They'll be coming out tomorrow on Thursday. I have to remember that because it's Monday night right now. So thank you so much for listening. We will catch you next time.
Yep. Thanks for listening.